Is active, and you can proceed with the meeting, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much. Good evening and welcome to our virtual meeting of Brampton's Planning and Development Committee. This meeting will be held through remote electronic participation in accordance with Municipal Act 2001 as amended by Bill 187, the Municipal Emergency Act 2020, and in order in council for March 2020, which amended the Emergency Management and Civil Protection Act and prohibits organized public events with large gatherings of people. City Council has authorized virtual meetings of its committees with all members participating remotely to facilitate the continuation of city business during the pandemic. We will begin the meeting with the City Clerk calling the roll for attendance at today's meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So Mr. Chair is present. Councillor Fortini, we are still trying to get connected. Councillor Vicente?
Present.
Councillor Santos?
Here. I'm here, Peter. I got connected.
Thank you, Councillor Fortini. So you'll be shown as present. Councillor Santos?
I'm here, thank you.
Councillor Palesci?
Present.
Councillor Dillon?
Here.
Councillor Willens?
Present.
Councillor Bowman?
Present.
Councillor Williams?
I'm here.
Councillor Singh?
Present.
Mr. Chair, all 10 members are present.
Thank you very much. Our next item is approval of the agenda. I will ask the clerk to first review the changes to the agenda since its publication of the proposed consolidated agenda on Friday evening.
So through you, Mr. Chair, to members of committee and those participating, the main changes to the agenda were in regards to item 6.1, which are public delegations for site-specific amendments to the sign bylaw, specifically in regard to 7685 Year Ontario Street, Kalo Developments, and 9910 Airport Road, Smart Stop Self-Storage. Both of those reports and the public notice were published at the end of the week. And the first one for Year Ontario Street is identified as 7.1 on tonight's agenda. And the second one regarding Smart Stop is identified as 7.2 on tonight's agenda. And Mr. Chair, that is the extent of the changes for tonight's agenda.
Okay, thank you very much. Does any member wish to add a business item to today's meeting? If so, please use the chat function in WebEx to add your name to the speakers list. And I do not see anyone. Okay. We have a motion moved by Councillor Santos that the agenda for the regular Planning and Development Committee meeting of September 14th be approved. Instead of seeking a recorded vote for this item, I will ask, is there anyone opposed to this motion? Otherwise, your vote will count in the affirmative. Okay, thank you. There are no objections, so the motion carries. As we all continue to cope with the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic and recovery, the Planning and Development Committee will proceed by conducting virtual meetings to support physical distancing and comply with public gathering restrictions while ensuring the business and municipality can continue. In-person attendance at this meeting is severely restricted at this time. Members and most staff are participating electronically in this meeting. The public can still access and participate in the meeting by a few measures. Watching this meeting remotely through the city's live stream and playback of the archived video stream after tonight's meeting has concluded, and prior to the start of the meeting, pre-registering with the City Clerk's office to speak as a delegation before the committee during the virtual meeting to share your comments and provide your input on specific agenda item on tonight's meeting agenda. Prior to the start of tonight's meeting, sending written audio or video submissions to the City Clerk's office to be provided to the committee for consideration during the virtual meeting as your input on a specific agenda item. During tonight's meeting, submitting questions about the agenda business or recommendations made by committee tonight by emailing the City Clerk's office at cityclerksoffice@brampton.ca with your question, which may be read in the public record during the public question period sections on today's agenda. A final reminder for members of committee before we start to consider today's agenda business, please ensure your video is off and microphone is muted until you are assigned the floor. Then you can turn both on when you speak. This will help ensure only one person is speaking at one time and minimize other background disruptions during the meeting. Do any members have a declaration of pecuniary interest under the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act for any matter to be considered on today's agenda? Seeing none, the clerk will so note for the meeting minutes. Consent motion. Our next item is a consent motion. The items listed with an asterisk on the agenda are considered to be routine and non-controversial. The consent motion is to adopt these matters on today's agenda without the need for a separate discussion on the items. Unless a member requests a separate discussion, does any member wish to add or remove an item to the consent motion today? If so, please use the chat function in WebEx. Add your name to the speakers list. Okay, so I have a motion moved by Councillor Bowman to approve the consent motion that the following items listed for consent considered to be routine and uncontroversial by the committee be approved. Items 7.5, 8.1, 11.2, and 11.3. Is there anyone opposed to this motion? Otherwise, your vote will count in the affirmative. Thank you. There are no objections, so the motion carries. So our next section of tonight's agenda is the statutory public meeting. This is a public meeting of the Planning and Development Committee held in accordance with the requirements of the Planning Act of Ontario. The proposals to be heard at this public meeting are the result of applications made under the Planning Act. These are not proposals of the City of Brampton unless they are specifically identified as city-initiated proposals. We do not have any city-initiated proposals as part of tonight's statutory public meeting. The intent of the public meeting is to receive submissions from the public regarding these proposals. Given we have persons watching the meeting through the city's live stream, we will have staff present each proposal subject to the statutory public meeting unless committee decides otherwise. After receiving any pre-registered delegations, members of the committee may ask questions for clarification, but will not engage in debate on this proposal at this time. Committee consideration of the proposal will occur at a future meeting when planning staff bring forward the final recommendation report on each proposal. The city also posted to its website, brampton.ca, supporting information documentation for these development applications for public review and reference. We will now proceed to consider the one item on this evening's statutory public meeting agenda. After consideration of these public meetings items, committee will deal with the balance of the agenda items on tonight's agenda. So we are now going on to item 5.1, which is an application for proposed draft plan of subdivision. So I believe I will hand it over to, is it staff who, I guess it's Nikita Jagtiani. Nikita?
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, committee
Yes.
members of the public. My name is Nitika Jagtiani, and I'm the planner assigned to process and review this application. The purpose of this public meeting is to provide information to the public and seek feedback on the application filed by Candovcon Limited on behalf of Mr. Navjot Brar. Next slide, please. The subject lands are located on property municipally known as 10764 Bramley Road in Ward 9. The lands are located to the west of Bramley Road between Father Tobin Road and Sandalwood Parkway to the north and south respectively. Slide, please. The property has the following characteristics. The site currently has a single detached dwelling to be demolished in the future. The frontage and driveway access to the site is on Bramley Road. The site has a total area of approximately 0.39 hectares, which is 0.96 acres, and has a frontage of approximately 66.16 meters, which is 217 feet along Bramley Road. Next slide, please. The applicant has submitted an application for a draft plan of subdivision. This development ultimately proposes 15 townhouse units in a common element condominium. Details of the proposal include 3 townhouse blocks, which is block 1 to 3, that include a total of 15 townhouse dwellings in a common element condominium, an amenity space block, which is block 4, approximately 0.021 hectares, which is 0.052 acres in size, a mutual driveway access, which is block 5, with the adjacent property to the north, municipally known as 10788 Bramley Road, and a block for the private road to service the condominium units and visitor parking. Next slide, please. An official plan amendment and zoning bylaw amendment in January 2019 were previously approved to permit this development. The plan of subdivision application does not propose changes to the development proposal. Access from Bramley Road will be shared with the property to the north. Registration of shared access easement will be required to legally formalize this agreement. Details for the design of the development will be reviewed through the site plan application that is to be submitted and processed concurrently with this application. Slide, please. The This is a map showing the property owners within a 240-meter limit of the proposed development who would have received notice by direct mail and with respect to the application. Notice was also provided in the Brampton Guardian newspaper and the City of Brampton website. Next slide, please. The property is designated residential as per Schedule A of the official plan. An official plan amendment was approved in January 2019 to permit the proposed development. Next slide, please. The property is designated medium density residential in the Springdale Secondary Plan. This designation permits the proposed townhouse development. An amendment to the secondary plan is not required. The property is zoned Residential Townhouse C, RC3, Section 2910, as per Zoning Bylaw 270/2004 as amended. This zone permits dual frontage townhouse dwellings and townhouse dwellings. A zoning bylaw amendment was previously approved for the subject site, and no changes to the zoning bylaw are required to facilitate this proposal. Slide, please. This slide shows where staff are in review of the application. The application for a draft plan of subdivision was submitted on July 17, 2020. The application was deemed complete in accordance with the requirements of the Planning Act, and a formal notice of complete application was issued to the applicant on August 4, 2020. The application has been circulated to city departments as well as other agencies for technical comments, and the notice of the public meeting was given to property owners in the vicinity of the property, as well as published in the paper and on the city's website. We're now at the public meeting stage where committee members and staff are here to listen to any feedback from residents. After tonight's meeting, staff comments received from city departments, agencies, members of the public that submitted correspondence, as well as matters raised at tonight's meeting through the public delegation will be reviewed and evaluated. The proposal will be further assessed against the provincial policy statement, the Greater Golden Horseshoe Growth Plan, the region's official plan, and the city's official plan and secondary plan. Once the analysis and evaluation is complete, staff will return to Planning and Development Committee with a recommendation report. This report will address all matters raised by members of the public, external agencies, and other city departments. Anyone that provide their contact information with respect to this application will be advised when the recommendation report will be considered by the committee. Once the decision is made on the application by City Council, there is an opportunity to appeal the decision to the Local Planning Appeal Tribunal. Next slide, please. The report associated with tonight's meeting is available online, and the presentation will be available online shortly. Again, my name is Natika Jagtiani, and my contact information is posted on the screen. Also on screen is the contact information for Eric Mertzu of CandivCon Limited, who represents the property owner. Thank you. This concludes my presentation.
Thank you very much, Nitka, and my apologies. Now, our next, do we have someone from, on behalf of the applicant who would like to speak?
Through you, Mr. Chair, there was somebody identified, Eric Mertzu, but he is not present tonight, and we have no public delegations identified.
Okay, so as a result, I don't know if there's any questions from members of the committee? Clarification? No? Okay, so I believe we have a motion. So I have a motion moved by Councillor Dillon or Councillor Singh. City Clerk, if you can just remind me. Councillor Singh, can I have him move it or?
I'm okay if you want me to.
Okay. So I have a motion moved by Councillor Singh to approve the staff report recommendations and receive all related delegations and correspondence, that the report titled Information Report, Proposed Draft Plan Subdivision, CandivCon Limited, Navjot Brar, 10764 Bramley Road, Ward 9, dated August 6, 2020, to the Planning Development Committee meeting of September 14th, 2020 be received, and that Planning, Building, and Economic Development staff be directed to report back to the Planning Development Committee with the results of the public meeting and the staff recommendation subsequent to the completion of the circulation of the application, a comprehensive evaluation of the proposal. Is there anyone opposed to this motion? Otherwise, your vote will count in the affirmative. Thank you. There are no objections, so the motion carries. Statutory public meeting for this item is now adjourned. We now go on to public delegations. So we have a public delegation. The first one is related to staff report 7.1 and 7.2 on today's agenda. And I believe City Clerk, our first one is Callow Developments in Ward 3.
That is correct. There are two, in fact, and there are applicants and representatives present should there be any questions, but we do not have any members of the public who have requested to speak on either of these items.
Okay, so I see none, so I believe we can move on to our next business item, and we'll deal with that item in agenda order. So our next delegation is item 6.2, delegation from Jotvinder Sodhi, Sukhwinder Dhillon, Harinder Chiman, Sukhjot Nehru Homeowners Welfare Association regarding affordable housing and zoning changes. I'll hand it over to you, City Clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So Jotvinder and Sukhwinder, you have been brought into tonight's session as a panelist, so you can turn your microphones on, and we have your presentation on the screen right now, and please proceed. So Jotvinder, if you can just unmute your microphone, and then we will be able to hear you. So Jotvinder, I'm going to unmute your mic. Go ahead, Jotvinder. Jotvinder, your microphone is active. Please go ahead. Jotvinder? Mr.
Peter, it's Alan Parsons here. I'm just noticing in the email that Mr. Sodhi had sent at 5:56 p.m. today, advising that he was hoping that 8 o'clock p.m. apparently is the time that he'd like to delegate to committee. But just relaying that information.
So through you, Mr. Chair, does committee wish to stand this item down then to later in the evening?
Members, so do we want to vote on this, Peter?
Through you, Mr. Chair, if it's the will of committee just to stand it down and proceed with the other business and then come back to it when Mr. Sodhi does join the session. He does appear to be in the session right now.
Yeah, well, if I'm allowed to, Peter, I'll just make a ruling. Let's proceed, and we'll come back to it if he comes back on.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so we're now at staff report 7. Sorry. Where our next item is staff report 7.1. Do any members have any questions about the report? No? Okay. I have a motion moved by Councillor Bowman to approve the report recommendations, that the report titled Site-Specific Amendment to Sign Bylaw 399, 2002 Callow Development, 7685 Her Ontario Street, Ward 3, to the Planning Development Services Committee meeting of September 14th, 2020 be received, and that a bylaw be passed to amend Sign Bylaw 399, 2002 as amended to permit the proposed site-specific amendment. Is there anyone opposed to this motion? Otherwise, your vote will count in the affirmative. Thank you. There are no objections, so the motion carries. Our next item is item 7.2, staff report regarding site-specific amendment to the sign bylaw 399/2002 as amended, 9910 Airport Road, Smart Stop Self-Storage, Ward 8. Our next item regarding a site-specific amendment. Do any members have any questions about this report? No? Okay, so I have a motion moved by Councilor Fortini to approve the report recommendations, that the report titled Site-Specific Amendment to Sign Bylaw, Smart Stop Self-Storage, 9910 Airport Road, Ward 8, to the Planning and Development Services Committee meeting of September 14, 2020 be received, and that a bylaw be passed to amend signed bylaw 399-2002 as amended to permit the proposed site-specific amendment. Is there anyone opposed to this motion? Otherwise, your vote will count in the affirmative. Thank you. There are no objections, so the motion carries. Our next item is 7.3, application to amend the official plan zoning bylaw, Smart Centers Incorporated, 370 Main Street, Ward 1. Do any members have any questions about this report? Okay, so I have a motion moved by Councilor Vicente to approve the report recommendations, that the report titled Recommendation Report, Application to Amend the Official Plan Zoning Bylaw, Smart Centers Incorporated, 370 Main Street North, Ward 1, dated August 21st, 2020, to the Planning and Development Committee meeting of September 14th, be received, that the official plan amendment zoning bylaw amendment application submitted by Smart Centers Incorporated, Ward 1, file OZS 2020-0003 be approved on the basis that it represents good planning, including that it's consistent with the provincial policy statements, conforms to the growth plan for the Greater Golden Horseshoe, the Region Appeal official plan, and the city's official plan, and for the reasons set out in the recommendation report. That the amendment to the official plan generally in accordance with the attached Appendix 12 to this report be adopted, that the tertiary plan shown as Schedule B to Appendix 12 to this report be received, that the tertiary plan shown as Schedule B to Appendix 12 to the report be added as Appendix 1 tertiary plans to the Brampton Flowertown Secondary Plan SPA 6, and that the amendment to the zoning bylaw generally in accordance with the attached Appendix 13 to this report be adopted. Is there anyone opposed to this motion? Otherwise, your vote will count in the affirmative. Thank you. There are no objections, so the motion carries. 7.4, short-term rental accommodation review citywide. Our next item is so regarding short-term rentals. Are there any members that have any questions on this report?
Sorry, Mr. Chair. Is that for the short term for Airbnb?
Yes. So I'll hand it over to you, Councilor Fortini.
Yeah. So, we've been working on this for a couple of years now, and I'm very worried that, people are not enjoying their backyards. And did we follow the procedure? You cannot rent, because I didn't read the report, less than 26 days a year? Is Bob on the line?
Through the chair, this is Marilla Palermo.
Yeah.
So I helped author the report. So
Yep.
what we're doing, the report basically what we're recommending is that it be applied to the principal residence only, and that we do cap the number of days per stay, so consecutive days. We still have to work out the details exactly specifically how many days, but may range between 27 and 30 days. And we're looking at capping the maximum number of days per year,
Okay.
if
And
that
what-
answers your question.
Yeah, and what happened, like I got Valley Creek and a bunch of residents, always complaining that every weekend there's a different party at the house next door. Is there going to be any fines? Like, how can we, we have this bylaw or whatever we're going to do now. Well, they face, if they actually rented more than that 26 days or 30 days a year.
Okay, so what we're looking at is putting a full program together and working with a third-party company to kind of regulate, to understand the number of days that are being rented, the actual property is. And then if they are non-compliant, then bylaw enforcement will go in and they'll have more of a measure to, enforce the consecutive days per stay. So they can actually tack on a fine or whatever it is, but that'll need to work out through the next stage. So right now we're just kind of in the initial stages. And then once we work through the stakeholder consultation, we'll refine those measures, and it'll become clear exactly what fines would be applied to people that are non-compliant. But the whole task at this time is to understand and appreciate the number of short-term rentals that there actually are in the city, and basically introduce a licensing program so they become registered.
And I get that. So when you're talking about outside, would you say outside consultant?
A third party.
A third party. What's that mean?
Scrapes. It's a company that actually deals with they scrape the web and they actually identify the number of short-term rentals. So they do the background, they do the data collection for us.
Okay, but my concern is not about the short, it's mostly Airbnb. You know, we got a lot of complaints that every weekend there's a different party at different homes, and people cannot enjoy their backyards because they come for the weekend, they're gone. That's why I've been fighting for the last 2.5 years. So I know Toronto happened to go try to do it, but I think Airbnb took them to OMB at the time, which is LPAT today, and they lost. So if they came out with this rule, you cannot rent your house less than 26 days. Why do we need another third party and do all this work when it's very simple? You know, I don't want to go in my backyard and every weekend and next door to me, they're having a different party, because at the end of the day, I'm paying my property tax. That's where residents saw me, and I can't enjoy my backyard, my swimming pool, and people having parties every weekend because they make money and I can't enjoy my property. That's very unfair to the residents. So I want to make it fast and quick because I know this year has been good because of the COVID-19. So a lot of people didn't rent, or else we would have so many complaints. It's been, you know, it's already 2 summers went by and this is a third. And I want to make sure we get this right. And for these people, next summer, they could enjoy their backyards. And now winter's going to come along. It's going to be worse with all these parties going on.
Can I just put some clarification that with the first point with the City of Toronto, they actually are moving forward with their short-term rental licensing program. So they did not lose at the LPAT. They actually went through and they're actually applying those measures in the new year. And for the noise, it would be with proper bylaw enforcement in terms of the noise complaints. I guess they have a noise nuisance bylaw, so they would actually call 311, and that could be addressed in that through that measure. What we're trying to do is we don't know how many properties there are and the actual addresses, and that's what this would help to actually identify where these are, and that will include Airbnb, because there's many companies, not just Airbnb, that are doing short-term rentals. So it would help us fully appreciate the extent of the problem and the issue. Just by going after Airbnb and looking at the listings wouldn't give us a full picture of what's actually out there. So if you read through the report, in April, I believe there was approximately 822 unique rental units, and that dropped in August slightly, so to about 625. So this would help us basically, it would be a tool for bylaw enforcement to actually identify the properties that are being used for short-term rentals and help with that, I guess, the party houses, as you defined it as.
Yeah, you know, and I appreciate that because, you know, the thing is, Toronto just came out with a short term last week, and I read on it. We've been working on this almost 3 years now. So, you know, I don't want to hear no more complaints. And I agree with the residents. Come on, we got to face it. You know, when someone's sitting in their backyard and next door there's a party every weekend, and then they put out the garbage on a Sunday night, and the garbage passes on a Wednesday, and we get all these raccoons or whatever at night, these animals ripping it becomes a disaster. And this is where we're having a problem with rats. We're having a problem with everything in the city. Now, pushing it into bylaw, which I did add it to the agenda of the week, because even property standards and bylaw, they go over, they can only do so much. And at the end, so if we start finding the owners of the house, maybe it might help a bit. And it's causing also a problem because people can't find rentals. Why would I rent my house to a family when I could do an Airbnb and make $2,000 a week?
Well, I think that's why this would help. When we're limiting to the principal residence, that would limit the number of investors coming in and actually purchasing a number of properties, being like a broker for short-term rentals. So this is one measure that would help control that. Even the City of Toronto has recently seen that by limiting to the principal residence, there are a number of condo properties that are coming up for sale now that were used as investment properties. So Airbnb does research in this area, and they've commented that's a good approach to take to limit the number of properties being scooped up by these short-term rental investors.
Yeah, and I agree.
Councillor,
That's what's causing a problem. You know, when we say the rent is just so high and stuff, like, you know, people can't find a place, sure, because they're making business. And it's not only Airbnb, because I see a lot of ads in the paper. They're private people that buy a home and they put an ad there, and they just rent out to these parties. No.
So, Councillor, I just wanted to be clear, Bob Yerke here, that what the report is proposing, what we're proposing is to introduce a short-term rental licensing bylaw. that would reflect a lot of the elements that have been successful in Toronto. And so that is something that we're proposing we go ahead with. And the third party that Morella is speaking to would be helping for us to document exactly who is renting out and the elements they're using, the length of time. So that would help with the enforcement side, the bylaw enforcement, to enforce the licensing bylaw that we're proposing to come forward with.
So let me get it clear. So you mean if I pay license, I'm okay to rent my house? Is that what you're saying for weekends? Is that
No,
what
it would no. So right now it's not regulated. So this would introduce regulations that would put a cap on the maximum number of consecutive days, for example. It would be limited to the principal residence, so you couldn't own. You would have to be renting your principal residence. So a third party, you couldn't rent it to own another house and rent that out. You would limit the number of days the property could be rented, number of rooms, and then we would prohibit short-term rentals in basement apartments or registered secondary suites. As well as through the licensing, we have another tool to ensure that all of the other bylaws that are required would be enforced, because then otherwise you would lose your license. So it's another tool for us to make sure that people comply with the noise and every other thing that I think you tend to see as issues that arise.
Okay, I appreciate it, but I know you guys have done a lot of work. I've been going back and forth. My thing is, what I'm worried is we put all these bylaws and all, and then bylaw says, well, it takes a year and a half to take them to court, and our courts are full. So yeah, I want to try to make something that it has to be very quick. When I go to someone's home as a bylaw, it has to be done right away. Not that while we give them an order or they comply back and forth, we're in the court. And meanwhile, the guy gets away with a year and a half. So
right. So this is why having it as a licensing bylaw, so they'd be required to license themselves as for that purpose with the city as like a business license as the basis for that. So that is much quicker than having to go through a property standards type approach.
okay, thank you so much, and I appreciate all the work, Bob. Good.
Okay, well, thanks, Councillor.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Williams.
Thank you. Through the chair. Marilla, great report, very thorough. I think you've touched on some really important pieces that are going to help put some regulations around the short-term rentals here. In a portion of the report, you talked about neighborhood character. How do you plan on deciding which neighborhoods would get the licenses based off of the character? Which neighborhoods do you think, and what criteria are you going to be looking at to make it possible for people to get these licenses?
And through the chair, it's Morella again. We were going to apply this citywide. So we actually, that portion is the neighborhood character, just referred to a general overview of, individuals' concerns through the guides we read through. So just stating that, a licensing program would help with that because it would be limited to the principal residence. So that way people would take care of their properties. We wouldn't be, the intent wasn't to identify strategic areas in the city where this would be applied to.
Okay, I see. Thank you. And through the chair, when you're creating your regulatory approaches, will you consider adding the homes that have had complaints already to the ineligible list?
Through the chair, we haven't discussed that at that point. We have an internal steering committee, so that's something that could be potentially discussed, but it hasn't been brought up yet. It was more of a system that if they did have a number of violations, if they if they did have a license and they had a number of violations, then they would be taken off the list. But we haven't discussed the other one, but I could note that and then we could discuss it.
Thank you for doing that, because we've had numerous complaints about different homes that have had parties and have left, garbage. I know our bylaw has been busy responding to some of these complaints. So it would be good to see that those people who are not respecting the bylaws and the property standards that we have in Brampton, if they have a certain number of infractions already, that they would not be eligible to get a license. And so I'm glad that you're noting that. I think it would be good to see which ones are responsible and are making sure that their rentals are within the limitations and within the boundaries and not going outside of that. So just a final question. If we do put in the licensing program, which I think is a good move and a good strategy, there was a piece in there about taxation. Do you know what could be the potential tax revenue on this if we do put the licensing and do tax some of these homes that are operating as businesses for short-term rentals?
Through the chair, it would be, we're not going to be doing that just yet. It would have to be worked out with finance, but we would look at the total number of people that have applied for licensing, and then we would apply maybe similar to other municipalities, a 4% municipal accommodation tax. So that would also have to apply to the hotels and other similar type of uses, like similar type of companies. So again, we gave a number of, as of, I guess, April 2020, of how many we had unique units. So that would be the potential revenue that could be generated.
Okay, and that number was fairly high, even though there was a dip because of COVID. It was over 700.
Yes, it was over 7. It was 825. So I'm just.
Yeah. Okay, well, that's good to hear. I think it's a good option. I think we do often talk about not being able to receive tax revenue from a lot of basement apartments and so on and so forth. So if this is an option, I think it's good for us to explore. So I do look forward to seeing what comes out of the scrape and who are the renters and which ones are being respectful of our bylaws and those who aren't. And so I look forward to the report coming back. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. Councillor Bowman.
Thank you. Very quickly through you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to make sure when Councillor Fortini was asking his questions of Bob, Bob made a statement about, I'm pretty sure he said prohibit second unit rentals rather than limit. I just want to check that with Bob.
So through the chair, what I'd indicated, what we're proposing would be to prohibit short-term rental accommodations in basement apartments or registered secondary suites. So the intent would be to preserve those for long-term rental housing options, not for short-term.
Perfect. As long as I heard the word prohibit, that's good. Thanks, Bob.
Yep.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Fortini, second time.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. So back to Morella, and a question that Councillor Charmaine Williams raised. So we're going to be generating, you said, about a 4% tax on this, on the business?
Through the chair, not at this time until we implement a municipal accommodation tax, which we'd be working with finance and cultural services to move that forward. It wouldn't happen at this time. What we would be, like at this time, what we were moving forward with is an annual licensing. So basically a registration fee that would be collected, but not the tax at this time. That will be reviewed at a later date, possibly in 2021, that a report will come forward through finance.
So, this is where I have a problem. So the city's making money. Let me get this clear, because I got one around the corner from me and I've kind of been going back and forth with these people. So the city wants to charge a 4% to make money on the license, and I can't enjoy my property when I'm paying my property tax. How are we going to explain this to the residents? So, we got to be clear on this thing here. Like on this Airbnb, is it nice that a neighbor has a party every weekend, but it's okay, we're going to charge them a little bit of license fee because we're generating tax? What about my tax that I pay? And I got the house around the corner from me every weekend. There's a party there, dancing and screaming and music and people yelling out of the windows. So and I don't want, and I'm sure no councillor wants us beside next door to them or any other resident, because it's not a business. You want to go to business, go to a motel where they're paying. But if I got to enjoy my backyard and have my own picnic and I have a pool and I want to have my grandkids and I can't have it because at 9 o'clock they're swearing and drinking, that doesn't help me as a city. They're generating some tax. So we got to really look into this.
Through the chair, the councillor, the licensing provisions that we're looking at that are proposed would restrict those kinds of activities from occurring. It's the remainder that when they were operating as we'd like to see them be operating. So for shorter term, it would be one stay, less than a month, the number of years, and as well as complying with all the other aspects that they would need to for their licenses, that there might be an opportunity to recover some of the provisions that Morel had mentioned through the accommodation tax. But that's sort of a down the road thing. But it is something that the province of Ontario has made available as something that municipalities could look at to help support the functions of the municipality, if you like. But it's not intended to, basically offset the fees for businesses.
Okay, thank you so much. And I get it. So as long as we look into this report more, because I'm really worried because I've been getting a lot of complaints from residents on this. So I'll wait for the report, and thank you so much for all the work you've done.
Okay, so I have staff report. I see it's moved by Councillor Santos. That the report titled Recommendation Report Citywide Short-Term Rental Accommodation Review to the Planning Development Committee meeting of September 14th be received, that staff be directed to proceed with public and stakeholder engagements and report back to Planning Development Committee with the results of the public consultation. Is there anyone opposed to this motion? Otherwise, your vote will count in the affirmative.
Recorded vote, Mr. Chair.
Okay, so City Clerk, a recorded vote has been requested.
Through you, Mr. Chair, recorded vote. All in favor, please indicate. Councillor Santos?
Yes.
Councillor Vicente?
Yes.
Councillor Willens?
Yes.
Councillor Paleshi?
Yes.
Councillor Bowman?
Yes.
Chair Medeiros?
Yes.
Councillor Williams?
Yes.
Councillor Fortini?
Yes, please.
Councillor Singh?
Absolutely, yes.
Councillor Dillon?
Yes.
Mr. Chair, that vote carries unanimously, 10-0.
Okay, thank you. Our next item, 7.5, was part of the consent motion. 7.6, application to amend the zoning bylaw, Glen Schnarr and Associates Incorporated, Connect Properties Limited, Ward 6. Do any members have any questions about the report? No? Okay, I have a motion moved by Councillor Paleshi, Councillor Willens, my apologies. A motion moved by Councillor Willens to approve the report recommendation, that the report titled Recommendation Report, Application to amend the zoning bylaw, Glen Schnarr and Associates Incorporated, Connect Properties, Block 102, Plan 43M 2015, and Block 27, Plan 43M 1990, dated August 21st, 2020, to the Planning Development Committee meeting of September 14th be received, and that the zoning bylaw amendment application submitted by Glen Schnarr and Associates on behalf of Connect Properties Ward 6, file C05W03008 be approved on the basis that the application represents good planning, including that is consistent with the provincial policy statement, conforms to the growth plan for the Greater Golden Horseshoe, the Region Appeal official plan, in the city's official plan for the reasons set out in the planning recommendation report dated August 21st, 2020, and that the amendments to the zoning bylaw generally in accordance with the attached Appendix 11 to this report be adopted. Is there anyone opposed to this motion? Otherwise, your vote will count in the affirmative. No objection, so the motion carries. We go now to the minutes of committee minutes. Brampton Heritage was part of the consent motion. So we go now on to our next item, which is deferred matters. There is a deferred matter regarding a staff report. And do any members of committee have any questions regarding application to amend the zoning bylaw by Nix Capital Corporation, Nix Henderson Limited, 12 Henderson Avenue, Ward 3? Councillor Bowman.
Thank you very much through you, Mr. Chair. Just wondering if we had an updated traffic report on that. I know that there was a lot of concern about where all the traffic, where all the vehicles were going to be going, since the streets around there were already clogged.
Through you, Mr. Chair, this is Cynthia Osujima here, the planner on the file. The applicant has recently submitted a revised traffic study, which is being reviewed by city staff and regional staff. But also just to clarify that with the report going forward, which was on the agenda previously, there was a traffic report that supported the approval of the townhouses. And the idea was that the additional studies will then be reviewed until such time as city staff and regional staff are satisfied for the additional units in the building to proceed.
Very good, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Bowman. So I do see a motion moved by Councillor Singh to approve the recommendations and receive Correspondence, item 11.1, that the report titled Recommendation Report Application to Amend the Zoning Bylaw, Nix Capital Corp., Nix Henderson Limited, 12 Henderson Avenue, Ward 10. Yes, was that Ward 10? Should be Ward, City Clerk?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I believe it's Ward 3. We will have
Yes.
that corrected.
Yeah, okay. To the Planning Development Committee meeting of July 27th be received, that the zoning bylaw, that has to be the motion, I believe. I shouldn't say July 27th, that has to be corrected as well.
Through you, Mr. Chair, yes, that will be corrected to identify tonight's meeting of September 14th.
Yep. Okay, that the zoning bylaw amendment application submitted by Nix Capital Court, file 01W050044, as revised, be approved on the basis it represents good planning, including that is consistent with provincial policy statement, conforms to the growth plan for the Greater Golden Horseshoe, the Region Appeal official plan, the city's official plan, that the amendments to the zoning bylaw, generally in accordance with the Appendix 12 attached to the report, be adopted, that no further notice or public meeting be required for the attached zoning bylaw amendment pursuant to Section 3417 of the Planning Act, RSOCP 13 as amended, that correspondence from Roy Jarvis, Brampton resident, dated August 26, 2020, regarding application to amend the zoning bylaw, Nix Capital Court, Nix Henderson Limited, 12 Henderson Avenue, Ward 3, be received. Is there anyone opposed to this motion? Otherwise, your vote will count in the affirmative. Okay, there's no objection, so the motion carries. Correspondence, okay, we moved that already. 11.2 is part of consent. 11.3 part of consent. Counselor, question period. No, and I guess City Clerk, before we move on to the last part, I guess that delegation regarding Mr. Sodi, are we going back to it?
Yes, Mr. Chair. So Mr. Sodi is back in the session. I'm going to bring him in as a panelist. Mr. Sodi, you are in the session now. If you can unmute your microphone, and we'll just confirm your audio before you proceed with your delegation. Mr. Sodi, I'm going to unmute your microphone for you. Can you please speak, Mr. Sodi, just to confirm? So, Mr. Chair, he is present, but he may still be tied up with the other matter that required him to request 8
I guess
o'clock.
we will reschedule, or maybe City Clerk give him the option also to send correspondence as an alternative. Is that fine with committee members? Anyone oppose? No? Okay. So we have no closed session tonight, and our next item is adjournment. Our next meeting is October 14th at 7 p.m. I have a motion moved by Councillor Willens to adjourn tonight's meeting, that the Planning Development Committee do not adjourn to meet again on till Monday, October 5th at 7 p.m. or the call of the chair. Is there anyone opposed to this motion? Otherwise, your vote will count in the affirmative. Thank you. There are no objections, so the motion carries. The meeting is adjourned. Stay safe, stay healthy. Most importantly, practice physical distancing and wear face covering when inside public spaces. Good night, everyone.